I'm Dan Langan and I can make anything out of cake. Every week, Food Network challenges me to a brand new cake baking challenge. This is Dan Can Bake It. Got a brand new box, it feels pretty light. I'm gonna open it up. Balloons, flags. This looks like maybe some 4th of July thing or something patriotic. Well, let's go for the official clue. Make the most epic patriotic cake of all time. So when I think about patriotic things, I definitely think of red, white, and blue. I think of a lot of fireworks. Every 4th of July, my family and I always watched the fireworks when I was younger. I think it'd be really cool if I could incorporate some sort of firework action inside my cake and maybe some type of like firework reveal when I cut the cake. I'm gonna have to let this one marinate a little bit. I think I'm gonna take this box and I'm gonna grab my sketch pad and see what ideas I can come up with. I'm gonna start with a red and white roulade cake, and when I marble those two colors together, it's gonna look like a firework pattern when I cut the roulade cake. Then I'll fill that roulade cake with blue buttercream and just roll it up nice and tight. I'll finish it with a red, white, and blue mirror glaze that's gonna be striped when I put the mirror glaze on the cake. So the first thing I've gotta do to make this firework roulade cake is take some white roulade cake batter and some red roulade cake batter, and I'm gonna put them in a half sheet pan and then get them into the oven. Roulade cake batter is this really light, really airy batter that has a bunch of air whipped into it from eggs. And then I'm gonna take a big offset spatula and just spread this batter all flat into the pan. With a roulade cake like this, the cake bakes in such a hot oven so quickly that it has to start really level because it's gonna bake so fast. And then I like to do this trick where you touch the end of the spatula and it gets everything nice and level. So now I have some red roulade batter, and I just color cake batter with the same gel color that I use for fondant and for buttercream. I'm using a piping bag to put this batter into the pan because I don't want the two colors to mix together yet. By using this pastry bag, I can get my red on top so the two won't mix together. So when I cut into this whole thing, hopefully, it looks like a firework. I'm just going to drag in one direction, kind of back and forth. I'm just trying to draw nice straight lines. I'm gonna take my batter, I'll give it a couple taps to get rid of any big air bubbles, but I'm gonna get this in the oven, 400 degrees, it'll bake really quick. I have some of my favorite vanilla buttercream here. It's just white, but I'm gonna dye it this really nice, bright, saturated color blue. I like to use 2 different blue food colorings when I'm making a really bright blue because that way I get like a really saturated, really pumped up blue. People always know when I've been working on a cake because I walk around and I have like pink fingers and like green fingernails and I'm just like, I was just making a cake. And then what I like to do is start with my lighter color. They call this like a sky blue. And then I just use a rubber spatula to stir it around. And I also love coloring buttercream this way too because just stirring it kind of knocks the air bubbles out, but it's gonna get even smoother just by stirring it. I have some darker blue in here, I'm gonna stir that in, and that's when you'll see this color gets really nice and bright. Stirring buttercream is like the best substitute for not being able to get to the gym. It's like, I missed the gym this morning, just stir some buttercream. I can set this aside now. I want this to stay nice and soft. So my cake is just about finished. Now it's at a really crucial point here where I have to get a clean tea towel, and I'm gonna dust the whole towel with some confectioner's sugar because as soon as I take this cake out of the oven and then put it on this towel and roll it up so that the cake cools in a roll, it's kind of like you're giving the cake a memory and you're telling it what to do. When you roll the cake up and you let it cool that way, it's gonna roll a lot easier. So I've got sugar on my clean tea towel. I'm gonna grab my cake out of the oven and then I gotta flip it out. Before you turn the whole thing out, you just have to take an offset spatula, run it around the side of the cake. One shot to do this, right on top of the towel. And then you peel it off. So now I leave this parchment on here and I take the towel and twisting the edge of the towel kind of coaxes the whole thing to start rolling up on itself. And you just roll it up nice and tight, just like this. I'm gonna leave this just like this. I'll place it on a cooling rack and I'll let it cool until it is cool to the touch. So now that this cooled, and this is like the big reveal here, check out how cool this is. The cake kind of stays rolled. That's like the magic of these roulade cakes. I like to be a little gentle with it. I don't want to try and flatten this down. So I'll just peel off the parchment. Use a pastry bag that has one of these open icer tips. It's kind of like this flat tip. I don't have to use too much pressure when I'm spreading it, so I'm not going to disrupt that nice roll that I created. And all I have to do is pipe nice flat lines of buttercream all the way down. And then just one quick spread. So I don't want to push down too hard because I want the cake to really keep that roll shape. I already have this edge it's kind of ready to turn up. This cake's ready to turn up, guys. And then all you have to do is roll it up just like this. And then since I'm gonna be glazing this, I wanna make sure that I land it with the seam right towards the bottom. So I'll give it just a little bit of a press, and I'll pop this in the fridge so that the filling sets up, and then I can get a nice coat of buttercream on the outside. While my cake's chilling in the freezer, start your mirror glaze. It's a mixture of water, obviously, some granulated sugar, some corn syrup in there, and then gelatin. And the gelatin is really what kind of causes the glaze to set up once it hits the cold cake. White chocolate, which has cocoa butter in it, which helps everything set up. And then there's also sweetened condensed milk in there, which is shiny to begin with. So the sweetened condensed milk is kind of the secret ingredient that makes the glaze really shiny. So my cake has been in the freezer getting really, really cold because whenever I mirror glaze a cake, I like it to be nice and chilled so that the glaze sets up pretty quickly once it hits the cake. So I gave my cake a coating of vanilla buttercream. And the funny thing with mirror glaze is that it starts out kind of yellow from the white chocolate. Adding this white food color, it makes it less opaque. And the immersion blender gets everything in there really nice and smooth. It also gets rid of any air bubbles. I'm gonna make it a little bit more white. Now that everything is white, what I'm gonna do is split this into 3. By splitting this up, I can color 3 different batches, or rather, I'll leave 1 batch white. I'm just gonna take some blue gel color, go back to my immersion blender again. I don't actually know if it's gonna fit. I'll try using a spoon. Add a good bit of red. I'll give it a stir. My favorite part of this whole striped mirror glaze thing is actually layering the mirror glazes inside of the container that I'm gonna pour them out of. Got my red, I'll add a little bit of that in there, my white, and I just kind of aim towards the center, and you just keep pouring the different colors, and then when you pour the color over the cake, it makes these really cool stripes. I'm just gonna start pouring this over the cake, just back and forth, and hopefully I get some really cool stripes. Takes a little bit to start, but once those stripes start coming, they look really cool. Oh yeah. Only thing left to do now is just let this set up for just a few minutes, and then I like to trim both ends so that it looks really clean, really pretty, and ready to present. Food Network challenged me to create an epic patriotic cake. So I have my red and white roulade cake that I marbled together to get this cool firework pattern, filled with my bright blue buttercream, and I topped the whole thing off with this striped red, white, and blue mirror glaze. So I'm ready to get the perfect slice of this cake. I wanna keep my layers nice and clean, and I wanna keep all of those colors nice and defined, so I just dipped my knife in some hot water, get a nice big slice. This is exactly what I was going for. There's a nice tight swirl to that roulade cake. The red and the white are nicely swirled together. The bright blue buttercream is the perfect contrast. And when I look at this mirror glaze, it's perfectly shiny and I can see myself in the reflection. It's always what I'm going for whenever I mirror glaze a cake. So I'm gonna go in for a big bite of this. America, so good. It's the perfect bite of patriotic cake. Don't forget, guys, subscribe to Food Network on YouTube so you can check out more episodes of Dan Can Bake It. And if you have a challenge for me, let me know in the comments below.